asked for not making the playoffs and not being able to stay on the court. And then Embiid came back and said he's got nothing but love for Lonzo. And you feel like this is going to keep going and going. And that's what you love. That's why Mark Spears of The Undefeated is our Mr. Basketball. He just spent a lot of time around the Sixers. Full disclosure, I'm from Philadelphia, but that does not impact my questioning of Mark. Mark, good to see you.
I heard. You probably got a Dr. J jersey under your suit right now.
Oh, yeah. Hey, look, how could you see that? I have no idea. All right, so talk about Ben Simmons, by the way. We're talking about first 9 games, 2 triple-doubles. That's Wilt Chamberlain territory. The guy just seems to have it all right now in his game, except for one thing, which we'll talk about in a second. Lonzo coming into his own. Talk about the impact that the youth movement is having on the NBA right now.
Yeah. You know, every year I go to the Hoop Summit in Portland, Oregon, to see some of the young guys, the top high school talent play against the top international teams, and I'm just amazed on just not only how talented these guys are, but how talented they are at their height. You know, seeing Ben Simmons basically being like Magic Johnson, seeing a Jaren Jackson, whose dad played in the NBA, standing 7 feet and shooting three-pointers just like his father. These kids now seem to be a lot more skilled. It seems like it's not just, you know, I'm 6'9", I'm going to score in the post. No, I'm 6'9", and I'm going to bring the ball up and start the offense. This is certainly a new generation. The days of the center are dead, unless you're just a Shaq and you're that special. And they're just, everybody's well-rounded, and we might have to get rid of positions soon.
Yeah, there you go. Although I don't know if Joel Embiid wants to hear what you just said, the day of the center is dead. We'll see. But, you know, Simmons...
Well, the special guys, the Shaqs and stuff.
There it goes. All right, so...
He's big time. He's big time.
Here's the other thing, though. Simmons got everything in his game. The knock on him is the jump shot. Can he become a superstar with his jump shot? And you know it's going to get better, but I'm saying, what does it look like for him to become a superstar with a shot the way it is, with him not really attempting that many long-distance shots?
Well, I grew up with a guy by the name of Jason Kidd. And when Jason Kidd came out, they called him Ace Kidd because they said he had no J. I think the Sixers staff has some good coaches. Lloyd Pierce, one of the development coaches there, that are going to eventually be able to get Ben to get that jumper. And I'll tell you what, when he gets that, it's going to be scary. He hasn't shot a three-pointer yet. I don't know when he will. But when he does add that three-point shot to his game, there's really nothing he can't do. And he's going to be overwhelmingly scary to play against.
Let's talk about the rivalries. You got Embiid versus LeVar. Everybody's getting involved. What does that do for attention on a team like the Sixers and the Lakers? These guys were also Rans last year. But now it seems like there's reason to watch besides what we're seeing on court.
Well, I mean, you're a Sixers fan. The NBA is better when the Sixers are good. The NBA is better when the Knicks are good. And now we're paying attention to the Knicks now with Porzingis.
But how does the talk ramp it up? How does the talk ramp it up?
Well, I mean, before, we didn't really care about this game. Both the teams were terrible. Unless Kobe was still playing in it, we didn't care. So now we're interested. This is it's not the rivalry. It's not Dr. J and Magic. But in time, these two players are going to be great in this league. They got complementary players like Embiid, like Kyle Kuzma that are going to grow into stars as well. So this is, this is the early stages, perhaps the rebirth of this rivalry and perhaps the Celtics-Boston one, because now there has been an influx of talent in New York, in Los Angeles, in Philadelphia, with some big market teams that, I know it's different than it used to be, but big market is still great for the league.
All right, Mark J. Spears sounded like a converted Sixers fan. He's got a cat there he wants to raise, but we just can't see it. If you're wondering what that is, look it up online. Hey, Mark, great to talk to you.
Take care now.
Hand it to Freeman, and boy, Anthony Hitchens hit him right on the number.
He'll immediately go into concussion protocol.
Russell got hit up high. He's shaken up.
Puts it back at the 10. Oh, he got hit in the head.
He is down and possibly out.
The NFL's chief medical officer says that more than a third of concussion evaluations so far this season are the result of players self-reporting that they have symptoms. That's much higher much higher percentage than last season. The NFL says that about 37% of the 379 concussion evaluations during the preseason and the regular season have been initiated by self-report. It was about 20 to 22% just a year ago. So what is changing? Stefania Bell, our senior writer and injury analyst extraordinaire, is here. And Stefania, the whole process, I think, for a lot of folks is somewhat of a mystery. Can you explain it?
Well, first, there's a trigger for a player to be evaluated, and that can be initiated by the player. It can be a teammate, it can be the referee, or it can be an athletic trainer who is spotting up in the booth. And those last two people have the ability to stop the clock so the player can be removed. Player then goes to the sideline, is taken to a blue pop-up tent for a screen. Based on the results of that screen, the player can be returned to play or taken to the locker room for a more in-depth evaluation.
Okay, so that's the way it should happen. Let's get into a few specific instances. Here you see Russell Wilson on the field taking a very, very big hit. Coming off the field, you can see he's looking like he's in pain. And afterwards, what ensued is inviting an NFL investigation. What happened here?
Well, you see from the video that the referee is escorting Russell Wilson to the sideline, telling him he wants him to be evaluated. The medical personnel awaiting him, essentially greeting him there. They are duty bound from that point once the clock has stopped to evaluate the player, go through that process we talked about. They seem to be guiding him in the direction of where you would expect the tent to be. And the gentleman in the red hat is the UNC, the unaffiliated neurological consultant, who must be in the tent for that evaluation. You see him presumably following Wilson, who's moving towards the tent. Then here, the two physicians about to enter the tent, but when they're ready to step in, Russell Wilson is exiting. And it doesn't appear that anything could have happened. He has his helmet. He's going back to play. Now, in this expanded video that came later in the broadcast, you see they're literally just pulling the tent down. The physicians have no opportunity to step in, and Russell Wilson is coming out.
He should have stayed in while they came in, get the examination, and then we see what happens.
Correct. And incidentally, there's a new rule that the spotter has the opportunity to phone down to the ref if they have not heard that
so
the
what's
player's
happening
been
here?
Cleared. Well, the tent did come down, and eventually he was evaluated. So when the ball turned over on the next series, they did the evaluation, determined he was safe to return, but it shouldn't have taken 2 rounds.
Sounds like some sort of mix-up rather than anything else.
And I believe that's what the league will be looking into.
Okay, so Jacoby Brissett, let's talk about the situation. Colts quarterback took several big hits, and we're talking really big hits, during the Colts game last weekend, and you see him on the ground right there. At one point, he's holding his head, comes off the field, goes back in, and then after the game, he's put in the concussion protocol. What happened there?
The player self-reported symptoms, as you mentioned just a little bit ago, and that's happening more, which is a positive because it means the players are informing us. And it's not uncommon for symptoms to present themselves 30 minutes later, like Brissett's did, or even 24 or 48 hours later. We've seen other players like Myles Garrett who reported when they came into the facility symptoms consistent with a concussion, and then they're put into the protocol. We heard from Alan Sills, the chief medical officer, that Brissett was evaluated on the sideline, passed a couple different tests before he was allowed to return. There is an issue. Most of these tests are subjective. We really need objective measures to get a better handle on this injury. But essentially the process, they say, was followed in this case.
All right, so we want to think it's an exact science, but ultimately we're talking about the brain, and you just don't know all the time when things happen.
And the players need to help out in the process.
Thank you so much. By the way, when we come back, it's not exactly egg on his face, but more like cheese and sauce for one big-time NFL sponsor.